What you think people fighting the world around? The ones who stole the money can't be found. Destroyed this country, thieves like inlaid. Abraham made off Kozlowski and Blade. Somebody knew, but dare that they tell. What I know is gonna be crowded in hell. Take your place on the stage of the poor. Don't matter, cause they can't see you no more.
Some disturbing patterns, some disturbing numbers with regards to DC police and arrest practices here in the District of Columbia. And we felt it was an urgent priority that activists who had been concerned about the criminalization of young black men and the disproportionate patterns of arrest that we see and criminalization that we see across the country be heard on this local issue, this local manifestation of these same kinds of patterns and numbers. So my name is Mike Stark. I'm one of the organizers for today, but I'll just aggressively and quickly hand it over to the...
Not with regards to a police encounter. We feel that this is an important issue that raises the issue of criminalization of black men in our society at large. Now, that being said, the Washington Lawyers Committee and the ACLU of the nation's capital have recently released reports studying patterns of arrests here in the district. And what we found is extreme racial disparity, both with regards to the ACLU report, which looked particularly at marijuana arrests, and with regards to arrests overall here in the district for all crimes. And I'll share some of those statistics with you. But before I do,
So the truths that were written during the time of the Declaration of Independence are very different. The truths today, we have to redefine them and be able to understand what are these truths. This is, right now we're living through a new Jim Crow. The Jim Crow laws were removed, but the Jim Crow mindset continues to be part of our society. You see it every single day in every action you do in the city. And it's really important for us to recognize that. To recognize that there are possibilities that go far beyond what we are actually willing to live with. You know, Langston Hughes, who a lot of you know is what Busboy the Poet is named after, was a poet that lived in the early part of the 20th century. He was a poet that spoke about the America that could be, and was talking about the possibilities of America even at the worst moment in America for black men. And so he was talking about, let America be America again. And you wonder, what is this America that he's talking about to be again? And it's the America that is what we all believe in. That's the reason why we're all here. Because we believe that this America can be better than the America that we've been handed. That we can do much better. That this is our call to say we will not put up with the paradigm of supremacy and racism that's been
crazy. Though I don't own a gun, when I did, I was just as mad as I am now. They took all that I had, my home, my insurance, my credit cards. They work half as long, I work twice as hard. I used to do drugs, but they made a new pill. The devil's found another way to kill.
Many of you about preachers go right on out there and make war on the white. You want to put yourself in you wanted some action.
The paradigm is always the same, and that is that you shake up, you destabilize, and you stereotype communities of color so that you can more easily remove communities of color whenever you need to remove them for whatever your economic designs are. It is no coincidence that as gentrification takes place more and more in Washington, you're going to see a police department that is going to act more and more rogue in terms of removing people of color and destabilizing people physically as well as psychologically and spiritually.
You don't like the idea of white people shooting black people down, do you? And you're ready to do something about it, aren't you? We know you are. And the white man should be thankful.
About tired as this shit.
You cannot say that we're any better off because of that. That's why I've introduced the bill to decriminalize at least small amounts of marijuana. There's no public good to say we're going to give you a criminal charge and now we're going to make it harder for you to get a job, harder to get a student loan, harder to stay in housing, harder to be able to go anywhere without saying, yes, I have a criminal charge. The public harm that's been done by that law does not outweigh the public good. So that's why we have to do it. Let me say that, in a credit to the council members, there's 10 council members that agree with this. And so we are going to pass this law, but we don't stop there. And before I go any further, on the Trayvon case, Trayvon Martin, even though they say this was not about crime and drugs, one of the ways that the defense used for Zimmerman was to say that Trayvon was not credible because he had some trace amounts of marijuana in his system.
I don't even own a car. Would take the bus, but it's probably late. I would take the train, but they raised the rates. Who do I call? Does anyone care? Best believe no one else is gonna pay that fare. Everyone in this country talking about rights.
Speaking about the same thing again.
Find a different angle.
It is, I find this racial profiling a weed in the war on us. Now, 10 years ago, I called it a seed in the war on us. But now it's a weed because it has grown so violent, so utterly unintrusive on those who are doing well in our city. And Reverend Hagler alluded to gentrification in our city. And I, as a candidate for the council in our last special election, spoke openly and consistently against gentrification. And strangely enough, there were those in the audience in the 34 forums that we had all across the city who booed when I talked about the ills of gentrification. Now, it's agreed that gentrification is a good thing, if indeed you're the gentrifier. Real simple. The seed, which turns into the weed in this war on us, racial profiling, leads to some drastic and draconian effects, of which I've experienced. Now, a lot of you pontificate on it, a lot of you analyze it, and a lot of you get to look at the reports. But very few of you have to live it. We have, now what are the symptoms? The symptoms of this. The numbers of those incarcerated. In America, 743 out of every 100,000 Americans have been convicted. Now Russia, which we always call Russia non-democratic, as said Snowden, Russia, that number is 577. That's problematic. Prison sentences, mandatory minimum sentences. I know the federal authorities pursued me, and for small amounts, they subjected me to 42 years, whether you know it or not. 42 years in the federal prisons mean 42 years. There is no parole. What are the symptoms? Legal representation, cozy relationships between public defenders and the prosecutors. Prosecutors with immunity. Prosecutors who have discretion to change the rules in the middle of the game. These are the symptoms. Case law that's ignored. I know I had to fire my attorney, write my own appeal, and win an appellate overturning of my conviction from a federal attorney knew that what he led me into was wrong. Folks, the war on us has several faces. Now, the question here is, what is the answer? We know that with interstate commerce, capitalism is king. So in order to make sure that private prisons and privateers and shareholders get their money, they must have a commodity. That commodity is the black male in America.
Before he met him and encountered him on that tragic night, except that he was black. And he fit a profile that has been manufactured by our propaganda in this country. This is what we need to fight. We cannot continue to have this.
I'm talking about countless black men and women confined in privatized prisons and federal prisons around the country for possession with the intent to distribute narcotics, who got locked up possibly for 2 bags of dope, heroin, or cocaine. who are doing 4 and 5 years in prison today as a result of that. I'm talking about countless men and women who had mandatory sentences if they had 3 prior convictions, 10 to 30 years, who have been on parole or incarcerated possibly for the last 35 or 40 years because their street time was taken from them. And so I'm saying that we must begin to address the issue of individuals incarcerated for non-violent drug offense out of Washington, D.C., and begin to talk about how we can begin to pass legislation so those individuals will return back to
So in the fire, they may make a bomb, they may run their mouth, but of course that's the coward's way out. They may complain, but that's all they gon' do. Till that dark day they come after you. Revise history and change the facts. It's hard for you to even believe that you're black. Watch what you believe like twisted DNA, and never listen to a Henry Louis Gates.